George Eustice, the Farms Minister, a little ahead of the programme. He couldn't be with us because, like so many other MPs and ministers, he'll be at his own local remembrance service right now.
This is an important day, and I'm in my constituency, and I every year rotate around the three main towns. So today I'm in the town of Hale for a service and a remembrance service at the memorial there.
Yeah, as so many of your fellow MPs are going to be and ministers are going to be doing this morning. While we look at the issue of remembrance, the many who've died in service of British values and British influence and British policy, and look ahead to the future, do you believe there is any risk of Britain losing influence as a global player, largely as a consequence of Brexit?
No, actually, on the contrary, I actually think that this is an opportunity for our country to reinvigorate itself, to regain its confidence, and to become that global, outward-looking country that we want to be. We're leaving the European Union because we want the ability to make our own decisions again and make our own laws again, but we are not leaving Europe. We will still engage very closely with our European partners, and we will work closely with countries around the world on common challenges such as the environment.
Yeah, those are all things you could do as a member of the European Union too, but does leaving the European Union mean losing some influence, maybe in one way, which is that the European Union functions as a body when it comes to applying sanctions in influencing regimes around the world? Britain will have no say in that in future.
Well, look, we work with lots of other countries, including the United States, when it comes to agreeing approaches and agreeing sanctions, and we can still work jointly with European countries in doing that.
But not take decisions, George.
Well, you don't take decisions now in the European Union. You're one part of many countries. And indeed, I've seen this as an agriculture minister. One of the frustrations is that we go there and we try to argue for change in Europe, but you end up not getting what you want. And then you end up having to live with something that's not right for you. And that's the fundamental problem with the way that the European Union's work for us. And that's why we've decided to leave it. But it doesn't mean pulling up the drawbridge.
No loss of influence and no risk of any loss of influence.
Not at all. And look, today we're making an announcement on the environment, and the point I would say about the environment is at the moment the UK does not have a seat around the table on some of the important wildlife conventions around the world, things like the Convention on Biodiversity, the Convention on the Trade in Endangered Species. All of these bodies, we are represented by the EU, and it's literally unlawful for us to go there and disagree with the EU. Now, in future, we will be able to build coalitions to promote protection of our environment and protection of wildlife as an independent country going there and representing the UK.
Just looking ahead to the immediate hurdles to be negotiated on the way out of the European Union, massive crunch point coming up in December. Will the Brexit negotiations carry on or will they stall? Is there now, because some say there is, George, a real risk of no deal, of no breakthrough, which means we do not, in December, start talking trade?
Well, look, we very much think that we should get on and talk about that future partnership,
sure,
including what a future trade
But do you recognise the risk that
like.
that may not now happen in December?
There's obviously a risk of that, but I think the talks will continue because ultimately it is in everyone's interest to get that new partnership in place. Countries like Denmark and Ireland and the Netherlands, these countries have incredibly close trading ties with the UK. The UK is an incredibly important market to them, and they are all very clear that they want that trade agreement in place. Look, always.
George, are you one of those ministers who argue that ending up with no deal, that's nothing to be afraid of?
We are doing lots of scenario planning, and we will cope with no deal.
But is it nothing to be afraid of? Is there no harm to be feared?
It depends on which sector you look at. If you look at the sectors that I deal with in farming and fishing, then it isn't such a big deal. No, we can cope on World Trade Organization terms. But look, it's not our preference. It's not our approach is that we want a comprehensive free trade agreement that is right for everyone.
We're going to run out of time, as we always do. And again, thanks for coming on. But can the government survive any more resignations or sackings, do you think?
Look, it's been a difficult week, obviously, with a couple of talented cabinet ministers being lost. But I think it's important to recognise that the government is really getting on now with the job of leaving the European Union. The withdrawal bill comes before Parliament this week.
Can you survive any more resignations or sackings?
Well, yes, of course you can, because the truth about these resignations is they're not resignations because people fundamentally disagree with what the government's doing. These are both individual resignations that have happened because of mishaps along the way.
And you can survive more mishaps, you believe?
Well,
you're sort of upbeat, or if not upbeat, you feel robust about that.
Well, look, there are always people who will step into ministerial shoes. So yes, if you have mishaps, you can always replace people in that way. The key thing is, if you had lots of people resigning because they totally disagreed with what the government and the Prime Minister are doing, well, that would be a difficult problem.
Amber Rudd,
but that's not where we are. We're
Amber
definitely
Rudd suggested that a clear out of ministers might be helpful. Would that be helpful?
Well, I don't know what a clear out means. I mean, the Prime Minister obviously is in charge of any reshuffles that she chooses to make. That's her call. But we've got a talented team in place. We've got a good cabinet that balances all of the talents of the party. And we've got a job to get on with, and we should just crack on.
Now, lastly, if I may, a group of economists are saying, aren't they, that the British economy could gain £65 billion as a result of Brexit, which is a fairly rosy prognosis. Do you endorse that?
Look, I hear economists on both sides, and I see it and I say that there's going to be this impact or that impact. I think the truth is the impact may not be that great, in that if we're getting into a position where we've got a freedom to make our own laws, ability to do trade deals, but maybe some change with our trading relations with Europe, it's too early to tell what the impact could be, because fundamentally,
might there be some sort of loss at least in the short term or medium term?
I don't think there will, because I think that the real gain.
But that's possible.
Well, no, the real gain of leaving the European Union is the ability to make your own laws, to do things better, to tailor things that work for your economy. Just as we have our own currency, we run our own monetary policy, no turning back on that. No one would now suggest we join the euro. It's the same in many other areas. That ability to control things is what gives you the advantage. Economists find it hard to model that, so they don't talk about that. Instead, all their modelling is based around trade. But look, I think there are great opportunities for us as we leave the European Union to forge a global relationship, global trading relationships, and our economy will continue to do very well.
George Eustice, the Farmers Minister, talking to me just ahead of the programme. And